Here we are. Welcome, everyone. How are you? Good to
Great.
see.
Pretty well.
Yay!
Hi.
So this, I haven't talked to this many people at once before, so please bear with me. So we have 3 of you who have returned. Thank you so much for coming back. 2 new writers we haven't interviewed yet, and we may have more people popping on as we go. So let's just go around and say who you are, the title of your play, and actually where you're from, right? Where you're sitting right now, I guess, is what's interesting to me. So I'm Deb. I'm the founder of Venus Theater, and also putting together this anthology of Frozen Women Flowing Thoughts, and you're all in it. So thank you. And we'll call this popcorn. So just pop in and talk. If it gets too much, we'll start raising hands and being more organized. But let's try popcorn and see what happens.
Oh, I'm Helen. My name is Helen Cheng Mao. I wrote the monologue, I Hate Depression Screenings. That's from my play, Waiting for the Gyne. And I am located in Olney, Maryland.
Okay, I'll go next. Dorian Palumbo. My play is called She Got the Movie, and the anthology is publishing a monologue from that. And I lived in Manhattan for 36 odd years, but now I'm in Jersey taking care of my mom. So back in my old bedroom, which is very weird.
Yeah. I'll chime in.
I'm Melinda Gros. I'm in New York City. My monologue is called This Is My First Pandemic, and it's from the longer play Another Homecoming.
Okay, now I'll chime in. I'm Amy Judith Reuben, and I'm currently in my birth city of Toronto, Canada. But I spent half my life in New Orleans, Louisiana, and my play is from New Orleans, and it's A Trick Baby's Tale.
And I'm Faye Sholiton. I'm from Cleveland, where I spend the warmer months of the year. My play is The Family Zoom. Delighted to see you all.
So great to see you, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So our opening question is, what caused you to become a playwright? And I think for Dorian and Amy, we haven't had that answered yet. So anything you want to say about sort of what called you to become a playwright, if anything called you at all?
I avoided it for as long as I possibly could, actually. I was in the first graduating class from Tisch, the dramatic writing program. I didn't know there was no such thing. We were the first.
Wow.
And I sort of accidentally got steered into it because they said, oh, we looked at your portfolio. We like your poems. You want to like go into this writing program? I was like, all right. You know, I didn't want to be an English major necessarily. Okay, fine. And then when I got there, I just hung out with the TV and film guys. And I never got taken to plays as a kid. So I was like, what do I know about writing a play? I have no clue. So for years, I just didn't do it. And then one day I just wrote a play called Carnegie Hill and started coming out. I mean, I had written so many other things full length before that it wasn't that much of a stretch, but it still was new territory. So
yeah,
not where I necessarily want to go.
Oh, well, love.
Yeah, you know, it hits you. It sneaks up on you. There you go.
How about you, Amy? Did anything call you?
I've been in the theater my whole life, basically, because I did technical and production theater for since 1982 professionally, and before that, I was hustling gigs with LDs of bands because I wanted to learn how to light. And my father was a professional musician who worked at the Royal Alexandra Theatre in Toronto for all of the musicals. So I got my backstage introduction through him, and I played music, but I didn't feel like I wanted to be on stage. And then, unfortunately, he passed early, but I went into technical and production theater. And from there, after moving to New Orleans, I stumbled on some very fascinating history that just became everything that I would research. And I didn't know what to do with it. I thought, oh, I'll write a book, but I don't really write books. So I started writing the play and then developing different aspects of all of this history. And I created a 501c3 nonprofit corporation to do a festival about this history, the Centennial Festival of the opening of it. And that was in 1997. And I had a staged reading of my full-length play in 1996. And then I just kept going through. And then 20 years later, in 2017, I did the centennial anniversary of the closing of the district, more commonly known as Storyville, with a festival again, and self-produced my plays. And then I started writing other plays. So, and continued doing technical and production for a very long time. And all of a sudden I'm doing that again. So yeah, my whole life has been in the theater, but I'm a member of the Dramatists Guild, and I take classes, and I just love writing plays. And I've written a libretto for the first act of an opera. So I'm trying to work with a composer, and I'm taking my play and turning it into a musical theater piece. So look for me on Broadway in the next 7 to 10 years. I mean, I'm just so immersed into the playwriting and performance. So that's it.
So I just want to call in Melinda, Helen, and Faye. Do you want to inquire further anything they've said, or do you want to add anything about yourself that maybe resonates with what they're saying right now? Just curious. No pressure. Usually I do that. I'll just do that. Are you back into lighting, Amy? What's your technical thing that you're doing now?
I'm actually working on a lighting design right now for someone else's play that I helped dramaturg, and she hired me as the lighting designer, and I dramaturged her play, and we open on April the 13th. So yeah, wow. I'm in very pre-production in this lighting design in the theater that I've never done lighting. And then I did 2 festivals since I moved back to Toronto 4 years ago during COVID, when we could get back into the theater. A couple of years ago, I did the lighting for 2 festivals, and then a small Women's at Plays festival, which was a couple of weeks ago. All women, all doing it all, is what we do. And I was the lighting designer for their festival. So yeah. Yeah.
I find it interesting that out of our group, 3 of us are producers as well as writers, and it might even be more than 3. That when you're in the theater, it's so much more, you can't be in the spotlight all the time. There are other ways of contributing and learning. And I was doing this 15 years when I thought, you know what, let me just bring other people's work in. And you're still contributing in that way. So quite interesting that we keep reinventing ourselves.
It's so expansive. And just this project, working on the 2 books at once, I thought, well, let me just produce through publication more writers than not 4, but 67, and then punctuation, right? But no, I'm completely tired. So like I'm waking up at night with ideas and ideas and ideas. And I think the way we operate at Venus too is so Renaissance that we rotate through roles a lot, like you're talking about, Amy. And it just it keeps everything kind of fresh and polished. It's not the way men produce, I think. And so, yeah, I agree. And Dorian, I want to ask you, being in your bedroom of youth, are you having new ideas? Are you having a different perspective on anything? How is it affecting your worldview? If it is
really literally, really directly, everybody I know is doing elder care. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm writing a screenplay about 3 others based on 3 others of my friends and myself. Just doing elder care and kind of Keystone Cops way that you end up taking care of somebody, sort of by default. Oh, you're single, you'll take care of mom. Oh, you're gay, you'll take care of mom. your life is you know, you don't have kids. Your life is forfeit. Just, you know, go live with the old lady. You know, whatever. It's like some people get along, some people not so much. And you know, so yeah, it directly inspired a work that I'm like in the middle of right now. But it's really more screen than stage for sure. It's just that's the way it feels right now.
Yeah.
So
And another of us of you also, I just had the conversation the other day because she was sending in her slates and she's like, I can't do it. And she would say, hi, my name is, and then she just start laughing uncontrollably. It's like, I forgot the name of the play. Oh, it's this. And she goes, you can't use anything. That was my 10th try. I can't do it. Like, I'm taking care. It was elder care that she's doing. And I'm dealing with medication and I'm not sleeping and I don't know. And I was like, please, can I use that? Please, can I use that slate? Like that slate is the subtext of all the slates. And so she goes, yeah, you can use it. You can use it. But I
cannot tell you, how many meetings I've had interrupted with things like, can they see me from over there? I'm in my bathrobe. You know, oh God, okay, fine. You know,
wow.
That's life now.
So let's jump to just tell us a little bit about your monologue. And I'll do this for all of you. I know the three of you we've heard, so we'll do like a brief synopsis a little bit. Just to keep it moving because there are more of you if that's okay. But the name of your monologue and just tell us a little bit about it. We can do popcorn, so just pop in whenever. Now there's tension.
I'll
Who will go?
start. I'll start. So the monologue is a trick baby's tale, and this particular character. So all of my characters from the district Storyville are compilations or are real people that I have historically researched, and this is one who has been photographed. There's an array of photographs that are famous by E.J. Belloc, and it's all the Storyville portraits. She's one that's been photographed, and she's in the book. And I've created her backstory from research and from interviews of musicians. I spent well over 20 years doing all the research to make these characters come alive and to give them their proper backgrounds. And this is a young girl who is a trick baby. She's the product of a prostitute mother and a trick that paid for the mom. And she grew up rather harshly before the district came legal. She was born up in the attic of Emma Johnson's studio, which was a real place. And then she moved through to go to live at another place as she got older. And where we find her is in the sick house because she has a disease from all of her tricks that she's vetted, and she's hallucinating, and she's seemingly drunk, and she's celebrating her birthday, which is on a leap year, February 29th, you know, she's just talking to her mama, talking about her life, and she's taking her clothes off. She doesn't really know where she is. She's asking where her friends are from Lulu White's Mahogany Hall, which was a real place on Bordello on Basin Street. And it's just her musings to herself and to her mother, who really doesn't know what's going on in the world anymore because she also was suffering from STDs, as we call them now. And she's in my big play. She's one of the characters in the big play because she was photographed, and I fell in love with her story, and I created that monologue separate from the play, as I have several of them, and she's the one I felt was the best one to send to you. You know, she's not had her voice heard before as much as a couple of the others, so I really wanted to contribute her. And she's, you know, she's one of thousands. that had lived the life and ended up not surviving very long in the life, dying from either gonorrhea or syphilis, or
This is what I read, yeah.
combination of both. So, you know, and then she mentions a few other people that are there, and she mentions Dago Annie. Dago Annie was a real person who was the midwife to the whores, who delivered all the babies, running to the houses with her little satchel to deliver a trick baby. And so, you know, I had to give some context of some other people that were involved, and Emma and Clara and Adele were other girls in the house at Lulu White's Mahogany Hall, who all have their own stories, and they're all together in the full-length play.
This is interesting because I read blind, meaning I just read the play. I don't look at who wrote it. I just read it and see what pulls. And in this process, I'm repeating myself now, I know, but dividing out the chapters in ways that I would produce them has been a real thing for me. And so I did not read this as biography, which is one of our chapters. I read it more as reproductive, like more as like what the female body has to go through sometimes. And this is very interesting to me that it is actual biography, because I read blind, I didn't realize that actually. So thank you for that. I'll move you.
Okay, we'll move her to another section of the book.
Yeah, I mean, she works in both places, but wow, wow. I think when I read it, I couldn't believe that would really happen. Like, you know, in your mind, you're like, that's drama. That's a dramatic thing. But it resonated as real. So it's fascinating to me that she's real and there are photographs of her.
Well, there is a photograph of a girl in the sick house being visited by another girl who they're both prostitutes. And from that photograph, the girl in the bed was the one I needed to focus on. Because also when I was doing the centennial celebration for Storyville in '97, and then again in 2017, I contacted the Pharmacy Museum, which is on Charter Street in the French Quarter, and it's the oldest working apothecary. And I did a series of programs with them, and upstairs they had something that I turned into a bordello room, but we did an exhibition for 6 weeks of the sure cures.
Wow.
So all of this was going on, and I did a lot of study with them, and the fascination with the sick house, which was on Rampart Street, and it did open its doors to everyone. Rampart Street was not in the district, but it was one street below Basin Street, and so that's where the girls had to be if they could get there. And then all of the study of the sure cures and the hoaxy things that people did, but the study of what women did to not become pregnant was really fascinating as well. And we're talking 1897 and 1917, and even before that, before the district came legal, well into the 1860s, which is pre the district. I've done studies about people and their situations, and all the documentation and the things that women would do in order to find out if a man had gonorrhea or the gleat, or find out if the man had syphilis, and the remedy that they would use to try not to become pregnant, and the different pharmacy museum personnel between those 20 years had different takes on it, but I did get a lot of information from them, so I have to credit them with the people who were in charge of the pharmacy museum, the executive directors who helped me to learn more about what was going on during the time.
If Alito and Thomas get their way and bring back the Comstock Act, you might want to publish all of that for women who need these things. Incredible. Dorian, total different, shifting chapters, shifting gears. Talk to us about what you've written.
It's again drawn out of something that actually happened in some certain form, but it's basically a younger woman. She's like, she's in her 30s, younger than I, of course. She's got an older friend who's they've moved to LA together to try and make it in show business. And he's been struggling. He's kind of an envious dude. And she comes to his apartment one hot, sweaty night to tell her she's actually gotten a part in a pretty hot film, and expects her dear friend of 20 years to be happy for her. And he just ain't. So
I loved it so much. It was just that it's not a grand war gesture. It's just that little thing that kills you.
It's a stab in the heart, and it actually happened to me. I was had gotten a pretty hot snot director to get interested in a screenplay of mine. When I went to tell a friend of mine, he just wouldn't stop washing the dishes. He was just running the water, and oh, that's right, oh, that's fine. And it's like having an ice pick in your heart. It's really messed up. So, but it's hilarious.
Everything becomes comedy after a while. Anybody want to jump in?
Pain is.
What's that?
Pain
What'd
is
you
funny.
say?
Pain is funny. It is.
It's a close meridian, right? The
Mhm.
laughter in the right in the brain, right there. Yeah, I know. My friend, I don't know if you know this. My friend was a victim of homicide, and I had PTSD, and
I followed that story.
Yeah.
And that was tragic. I'm sorry that happened.
thank you. There comes a point where you just laugh at weird things. Like I call it trauma comedy. Like that's, it's like,
Yeah.
People are like, I'm so like, well, she's still dead. So I'm sorry. You're sorry too. Like, just get to this place where your brain kind of like cries out, and it's fascinating to me.
Well, it can't cope. They can't cope, so it has to take that left turn.
Yeah.
Because you can't believe what you're in the middle of.
No, no, it's insane.
And if that's your default mechanism anyway,
Mhm.
if that is how you have deflected in the past,
Yeah.
it becomes even more bizarre when that should be something that you default to without
Right.
ever meaning to do that. That it's how you got through whatever else you got through that was as awful then, in
Yeah.
that other moment.
Yeah.
You can see that.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's really, really fascinating. So, Faye or Helen or Melinda, do you want to talk to Dorian or Amy about anything they just said about their pieces at all? Or we can move on. I just love to open it up, but it's no pressure. Two very different pieces, but very powerful pieces. I know you haven't read them, but any questions or insights or things you want to share about your own plays? Yeah.
The only thing I was going to say to Dorian is the reaction of the friend who is not supportive is, you just wonder, like, is it they don't care, or is it that's their defense mechanism? They have to protect themselves because they're so jealous and unhappy about their misfortune. Like they didn't get, you know what I mean? Or they're not having success. It's a tough position to be in, and it's
Mhm.
but yeah, it's a reaction. It's still hurtful. I'm not excusing their reaction, but I'm just wondering if that's just the way they it's like to defend themselves.
It's absolutely natural. It's absolutely natural. But the weird thing is, you can watch that reaction from somebody else being envious of somebody else and not really register it. But when you're the person that they're envious of, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that's what that's about.
So
And
weird.
yeah.
The first book I read about playwriting was by Leonard Egri, and it was a really sexist book. This is 100 years ago, but one of the things he said is there are two women in a scene, they're in a competition.
Mm.
And it was just a really interesting insight because it's subtle, or it can't be helped. Again, the whole book was sexist, but that was one of the things he said. And I went, well, I'll listen for that, in case there's something there. If you have small children and one walks a week before the other one does, well, too bad.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Mine walked.
Which makes, I think,
it
your
happens.
project, the way the women had to bond together in a way, right? To create that community kind of lies in I love the dichotomies of these things. Like there's one expectation from a patriarchal world, and then there's this reality that has to function in the shadows of it. You know what I mean? It's fascinating to me.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you've lived it too, Amy, this living history.
In more ways than I need to get into.
Okay.
But I wanted to backtrack, if I could, about what you said, Deborah, about the trauma comedy. Is that were you referring to writing out of trauma, to write comedy out of trauma? Because I know personally, and it's not with this piece, but that writing is cathartic to trauma.
Yeah.
Because I've done that as well. And it's so important for us to be able to express ourselves theatrically, whether it be drama or comedy or a combination of both,
Right.
to be able to heal. And there was a program again by a female, and it deals with grief, and it's called the Grief Dialogues. And one of my plays is going to be produced at a stage reading with a compilation of plays, and she's produced a play off Broadway of her own, Elizabeth Copeland, and she's done miraculously well with all these women who are writing about their grief stories, and the ways that she has combined them together to create the play for therapy as well as entertainment. And so, you know, we do these things differently than men. I think we do them better by about 16 times. We're more powerful than men when it comes to most everything. But the fact that we can do that more easily because we're more open to whatever our trauma or our grief in this case is, our experiences can be written, and we allow ourselves to heal through that. And she had a quote and she did a webcast called "Out of Grief Comes Art." So, you know, this is what we do. So out of whatever our experiences are as women comes our art. And it's fairly important that we have these discussions about the power of our voices in our art.
Yeah. The term I came up with is actually trauma humor. And it's because of the book and the feedback I'm getting. And they keep calling me resilient. Like she defied the odds. She's resilient. And I thought, you know, resilient is better than scrappy. And so it was scrappy for so long.
Spunky.
And gritty. So I was like, oh, and I was like, you know what? I think it's more than resilient. It feels triumphant. And I kept saying trauma humor. It's trauma humor. Like, we have to laugh. And my friend, I could feel her with me, and, you know, I could feel her laughing. And so exactly, I wrote a solo show to celebrate her called Living and Dying with Trisha McCauley. And it was devastating, but hilarious, you know, and I feel like that's life. Like we're not just one thing, we're many things, you know, and it was amazing because people flew in from the other coast. They convinced me to live stream and to other countries, and they would just say, you found words for things we can't say right now. And I would hear them sobbing in the audience and moving chairs around, holding each other, and I would just keep going. But it was a healing. It was a deep healing. And I think we just have to move through whatever it is. And for me, theater is the ultimate vehicle, right? It's the ultimate vehicle of empathy. So let's talk about process. I know I've had this conversation with 3 of you, and I know Doc is my favorite. So I'm like, Doc, do you light a candle? And Doc's like, I just watch MSNBC and get pissed off. Okay. That's my process. Turn on the news. That's your process. Like, this is a certain time of day. No, I don't need a candle. So, for you, your process, or anything you do in particular when you write a play? Does it sounds like Dorian, it comes and grabs you. Like, you've tried to avoid it. And
Well, something will strike me odd, you know, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like play, you know. A friend of mine is working now where one of her bureaucrats decided to appoint herself dog director. So I ended up writing a 10-minute play about the dog director. And there's all of these forms and all of this process. If you must bring your dog to work, they must have this and they must have that. And it was starting to get very Alan Bennett. And it was making me giggle as I was writing it. So maybe it'll turn out to be pretty good.
That's awesome. That reminds me of Melinda.
But when she told me that, I said, no.
No. Melinda is talking about riding the subway and just finding your inspiration in the world. Like,
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Listening to people, listening to what they say to themselves or on their telephones, and they think it's a
Love
private
it.
conversation, but it isn't. Like, it isn't at all. And I find that very, very interesting. Subways, buses, standing and waiting for the bus. Things happen. You know, we are not at home with the doors closed. And only hearing one side of the conversation is really interesting. Like, what is the other person actually saying? And what does that mean or not mean?
Right. Totally.
How about for you, Amy? What's your process like?
I have a couple of different processes. One of them, of course, is my historic research, which has been ongoing for so long, and there's so much in it. And the other thing that I do is I observe places, and I create from where the places are, the people that are in those places and their circumstances. And I've done that with a couple of different plays. I don't write too many short pieces. I think the shortest one is 20 pages, and I'm still working on it. I like to write one acts. I take classes at the Dramatists Guild Institute. I've been taking them for years. I'm inspired by people who are able to teach the concepts of writing, structure of writing. So they give you exercises to do, they give you prompts to do, and some of those flesh out into larger pieces. Learning and honing my craft and my interest in history, mostly. I mean, even a play that was inspired by a real place in Abingdon, Virginia, where a lot of my family lives, has become a full-length play. And it's got these, it's set in a different time period, and it's got these idiosyncrasies of that area. And I like to delve really deeply into language, the linguistics, the colloquialisms, things like that, that are not of my time or of my place. So those things are how I get inspired to write. And then from my own stories of my life that I've done through grief work, for grief, I write those stories. But yeah, so those are usually my inspirations are I guess they're narrower, but I like to observe. Like, I'll observe people on the subway in Toronto, and I'll look at how they communicate with each other, and I'll look at how he holds her hand, and I'll want to write that. I have a background in poetry as well, so I get inspired by things that are poetic in the world. But yeah, I just dive into a lot of places and research, and I want to formulate in my own mind who the people were that were living there and what time were they doing it and what were their situations. And then I'm very regimented in my writing. Except right now when I'm doing this lighting design, I'm usually in writing groups all through the week. And I get in there and I decide which piece I want to work on, what I want to do. I'm pretty regimented, and then, send them out to the world when they're ready.
Yeah. Good on you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your experiences regarding play development, and we'll combine the last two questions: play development and the role small theaters may or may not have played in your play development history. We can go with you, Dorian, if you're willing to jump in.
I was really, really lucky in that the most intense development experience that I had was with Rebecca Teichman before her Tony, like years before that. I was introduced to her, and she was interested in Carnegie Hill, and she worked on that play with me, and she was just, she spoiled me. She really did, because she was just so supportive and patient and cool, and the the give and take was always with an eye toward making the piece better. There was no ego nonsense with Rebecca. She's just so way cool. And then I had an experience with the same play. They had swapped directors on me, and she was also kind of hot stuff, but I won't mention her name. But she was basically sitting in the rehearsal room, taking my play and just going, like cutting things, just like it's not like I was looking over her shoulder. She was hacking things. And when I finally did see what she was doing, she was making like pseudo snide comments about this line or that. And I was like, really? Really? Seriously? So I've had both ends of the spectrum. Very, very good and really awful.
Right.
How was it resolved? How did you resolve that?
It was resolved by the producers getting professional divorce, not having any money to produce the play, and having the thing sit in a drawer. So that's where it is. So, you know, say la guerre. What do you want to say?
Yeah.
But I'd love to see it. Actually, I did see it up, but at a very tiny theater outside of Chicago. So I did get to see it up eventually, and it was a really lovely experience to have that happen, but much smaller scale. Nobody was talking Broadway, you know. Nobody was blowing smoke up my skirts about that one. You know, it was just, we're gonna produce it, we're gonna run it for a couple of weekends, and it was cool. It was fine, but it's still in the door. You know.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I've had this conversation with a lot of you, and just from a Venus perspective, and I know I'm repeating myself, that the Carolyn Gage play we did, Ugly Ducklings, the script was older than over half the cast when we produced it. The script was 18 years old before we took it on to produce it. And then with Zelda at the Oasis, a Pat Lynn piece that we did, it was a 13-year-old script that she had been commissioned to write. But instead of writing about F. Scott Fitzgerald, she wrote about Zelda. And so they were like, not so much. And so it sat in a drawer in an envelope. And she saw my call and had just like an hour to get it postmarked. And so she chose that because it was ready. And I was like, holy moly, this is amazing. And then it went off Broadway. But it happens too much, I think, what you're talking about, Dorian. Way too much.
Well, it might tie back to it might tie back to the competence assumption too. When a woman walks in the room, she is not assumed to be competent. When a male playwright walks in the room, he is assumed to be the genius that everyone thinks he is. And so when you're attracting money, you're attracting investors, you're attracting producers, you want to get validation from the men that are running everything. You know, they assume that you're not tough enough to take it through the process just because you don't have a penis, which is offensive, and it happens constantly. So
at the Kennedy Center, I've seen that firsthand too, where I've met one of my playwrights who was a woman who they paid for her hotel stay, but she wasn't featured on the stage. You know what I mean? And she had been in years before. It's like, oh, you're the flavor of the month. And I'm like, no, she's still a genius. Like, she's still one of the best living playwrights. And I'm sitting beside her in the house. It's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. And that's not to say it always happens, but it certainly does happen quite a bit.
Sure. Well, just really, really briefly, I mean, my name is Dorian. So there have been people that assume that I'm a man until they see me, they see my face, and they're like, oh, you're a girl. I've gotten that conversation a couple of times. And I'm like, and the temperature in the room can change, you know, sure does.
I love as a director when I walked into some project, this was so long ago, and the guy who appointed himself, he just looked at me and went, costumes, right? And I went, no, like
He was admiring your wardrobe.
yeah. How about you, Amy?
Well, since I worked in the theater, you know, for so long, I've read a lot of plays. I've worked on a lot of scripts. I've been in a lot of theaters, and that was my first study, is working in it. And then after that, moving to New Orleans and still working in it, you know, I worked with the Tennessee Williams New Orleans Literary Festival for 11 years as their technical director. So I was also working on Tennessee Williams scripts. And so I'm reading a lot of scripts, and I have my favorite playwrights that I study. I study them. I read their scripts. I study their interviews. August Wilson's one of my favorites. I've studied him for a long time. I've worked on a couple of his plays, and Sam Shepard and Harold Pinter and all different styles of playwrights. But I find when you're reading plays, you're learning about writing plays. And when you're reading from what the writers are telling you, like lately it's been Stephen Sondheim, reading his books, because I've studied musical theater now, I'm learning from them. They are my mentors. And then I take classes. And then I also am a member of writing groups. So for 7 years in New Orleans, we had a group called the Playwrights Unit at the Contemporary Arts Center, and we also self-produced our workshops, but we were a cohesive group of screen and theater writers who would critique, give feedback, and we met every month. And then the Dramatists Guild, also the Gulf South region, I was a member with them for so many years, and we worked on our own Footlight series, of which one of my plays, two of my plays got Footlight series with the Dramatists Guild, and the audience gave feedback. So this is the type of dramaturgy I've got from just having the productions read and by reading other people's scripts and learning. And then in New Orleans, I had a friend, Perry Martin, who just recently passed, but he was my dramaturg on everything I wrote that I gave to him. And he was a magnificent producer and director and writer. And he offered me the best of what he could give me for my plays. And I listened to him, and I really valued him. And yeah, this is what I'm doing for myself as a playwright, is to open up the learning and the ability to saturate like a sponge what people tell me, and then I just squeeze out what I don't need. But I'm very open to eyes on my page and for a really good critique from other writers, and that's been invaluable. I mean, I can't say enough about the feedback that I get, and then I keep learning. Being self-produced is hard when you're producing your own, and I directed my own, but I listened to my actors, I listened to my choreographer, I listened to my musical director. I just, it was not about anything else except learning how to make this a better piece for all of us, and for me to be able to do my utmost with what I had, and I continue to do that. And I think that served me well, because now I'm moving up in emergingness of playwriting I'm getting some notoriety, and I'm getting things seen by people that I want the eyes on those pages, because the pages are good enough for them to look at. And that's important. And actually, Deborah, you're the first person to publish a monologue of mine. So there you go. Obviously, I'm doing something right with working with my pieces and having people put eyes on my page and give me feedback to get to this point. And a couple other good things happening in my plays, in different plays. So I'm very grateful, wonderful. Really grateful.
I think a common thread now, I think this is my 8th or 9th session. I have to look. But a common thread is the writing group. It seems like a lot of people at least find one other person, or like to have a group of writers that they check in with. And also, it seems like a big theme is absolutely connection. So yeah, like as you say, you trust your dramaturg, and I'm sorry for your loss. But that we're all different. So different people are going to work off of each other in different ways, So that's what I'm getting off of it. And I'm just going to open this up now, and I want to talk about sort of what you see as a dream future for women in theater, if you have any kind of vision around that or wish for it. And if you want to add anything else at all, we can popcorn it in again, unless you want me to call on you. Are you okay to jump in? Yeah, okay, go for it.
I actually, what I like to see, and I'm seeing some of it now, but and and I'd like to see more, is definitely women in more of the leadership roles in theater. You were talking about how, you know, when a man walks in, you assume he's competent, you assume he knows what he's doing. When a woman walks in, it's always like kind of the test, like, really? Okay, well, let's see what she can do. It would be nice if that attitude were eventually just gotten rid of by virtue of the fact that you just then have so many women who are directors or producers, so that there's not even that thought when people, or that feeling when you know, they enter a room and see the production team. That would be very ideal. And I do have to say, it's interesting. I'm trying to think. I think it's the last few plays that I've been as an actor. I've had female directors. I'm trying to think, my own plays, I've had like a mix, sometimes male, sometimes female. So, but I always find that interesting and refreshing too, because it's almost more a matter of fact that, oh yeah, she's the director, or oh, you know, instead of, oh, she's a director. So, you know, I'd like to see that more normalized, I guess.
Yeah. Anybody else want to?
I'll jump back in because this is important for me. I'm glad that you brought this up. It's important for all of us. But when I started in technical and production theater, I was in summer stock in the early 80s, and I was the master-elect for the musical company, and I also was the master-elect for the drama company, but I had to hire somebody else to run those while I was running my musicals. And everyone on my crew for the musical theater company were all women.
That's great.
Everyone. We were the first all-female crew. Now, our technical director was not a woman, but our whole crew was women. And I still have the picture up in my room, the photograph that was taken of us as the crew. And it was 5 women who did all the work. And it was summer stock, y'all. That was not easy. The drama company, my electrician that I hired was a male. And his crew was the men, and we were the women. And we did absolutely everything. And we were running musicals. So that, I think we had it up on them anyway. We come around to all of the jobs that I used to do in lighting, in industrial shows, commercial theater, domes, I did the Superdome, I did all the convention centers. I was the lighting director of all male crews who hated me because I was the lighting director. And then one fabulous man stepped up and defended me, and he became my electrician for 20 years. We worked together in everything. So as I progressed through, I was the only woman who was welding. I was the only woman who was lighting. I was the only woman on the crew. Now, there's all kinds of women. The Broadway lighting designers, the women, the Broadway musicals, Wicked, Hadestown, women. We're doing it all. And if we get to the point where we are directing, producing, lighting, sound, set, everything, that's what I want to see. The all-female productions of everything that's going up in regional and on Broadway, off-Broadway productions for female playwrights. And that's the dream. You know, I'm going to write my musical. I'm going to get it as close to Broadway as it's going. Maybe it'll be on Broadway. And hopefully my composer will be a woman. There's sites for looking for women. There's one for opera called Maestra. You can go and find composers that are only women to hook up with you to do your work. So we have this, we're building this, and we are becoming this because that's what we want to do. And the big money comes from philanthropic couples. We can't forget that there's women with their men making philanthropic, creative decisions that help us in our theater. So we have that as well. Yeah.
That's so awesome to have all female crew. We have that at Venus a lot too. And it always, at the storefront, it just freak out the neighborhood because we just be running saws out there in our sports bras and they're like, what? It was awesome. But it was great. And then we teach other people and yeah, it was fun. Anybody else?
I would like theaters to reevaluate the plays that are their go-to plays because they imagine that you always get an audience for Grease or for the Sunshine Boys or for whatever, because some of them are lovely, but most of them feel dated. So even in their loveliness, they don't talk to who we are today. They don't, the odd couple, a lot of fun, but the women in it are ridiculous. I know the women in there are fine for the
non-existent.
So I would really like theaters to go back and there are some theaters who in their mission statement, they are there for new writers. But then when you look at what they actually produce, they aren't. And, more power to them if they can fill seats, but they can also fill seats with new theater if they go around presenting it in a way that is exciting and positive. Which would also mean, of course, they would start looking at, one would hope, at more female writers. Which would be great.
Well, most of you are probably familiar with the 50/50 award that went to theaters that had at least 50% of the works. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Through the International Center for Women Playwrights, which is an online group, literally as the title would suggest, international. I've been on that list for 30 years and can tell you that we have supported each other. I think I found the listing for this through ICWP for your book, because there are these selfless people who look through the internet. They look through all kinds of listings in different social media and so on, and compile a list every month of available opportunities for women. And that comes with your membership. It's pretty fantastic. The other thing, just in terms of the American canon, I have a strict rule. I will not go see a play most of the time if my kid has been in it. If it's already made it down to the high school production, probably you don't need to be producing it again. Because my particular niche is Jewish theater. Melinda, when you were naming some names, I mean, I won't produce Neil Simon. It's been done. Come up with, look for that person now who is touching that chord and really tapping into what, how we view the world through a specifically Jewish lens. And there are just so many choices. And so the company is Interplay Jewish Theater, and we have a website, interplaycleveland.com, and you can see the kind of work we've been doing. We do staged readings because they're free, and I make enough in the bucket to pay all the actors and pay the rent and pay the licensing. But that's what we do. We have a niche, and there are women's theaters, unfortunately fewer than there used to be, but look at what Venus has achieved. You can, as a writer, really look hard at the theaters where you're sending your work, because some of them are just non-starters. But look at the ones who are looking at people you haven't heard of yet, and look and see what Venus has done. You've named a couple of my friends with Pat Lynn and a lot of the people who've been out there forever doing their good work, and it doesn't always get picked up. So I'm all over the place with this, except to say that you can encourage whatever theaters are operating in your area to look at other work. If it's not yours, promote something somebody else has done, where it's a woman's voice, and you really need to do this, because that's going to pave the way for yours to get in. And the next thing we're introducing are in a couple of weeks. There are two women, Israeli women, who are in the middle. Well, one of them is gone, but her play still reflects where we are right now. But the other one was written a couple of weeks after October 7th. And it's called How to Be a Humanist After a Massacre in 17 Steps. And it's positively brilliant. The other play posits God in a therapy session with an Israeli psychiatrist. He's falling apart. He's lost his power because he started acting like a human being instead of, and that kind of stuff. Listen to what women have to say. Come up with a really good model or something that a woman could do that a man would never think of in a million years. And they will find stages. I really believe that.
I love
That's my
it.
speech.
I love it.
Can I ask a question
No.
of you, Faye? Are you familiar with
Sure.
Erica Dreyfus? Yeah,
Dreyfus?
Erica
No,
Dreyfus
I'm
sends out, she sends out Practicing Writer 2.0, which also is for everyone, different types of opportunities. Usually there's no fee for, so she does expanded that into her Jewish writers also. So I get her newsletter all the time. You might be interested in looking at her newsletter, and everybody might be interested in that, as well as, of course, the Playwrights Center, being a member of the Playwrights Center for opportunities. I find that to be very valuable. For its annual fee is only $75. And they've got the ops, more ops than the Dramatists Guild does, and they get them sooner.
Right. It's hard for the Dramatists Guild. I was a regional rep for 7 years from Ohio, and I can tell you they don't have the staff to keep up the listings as fast as theaters come and go and their needs change. So yes, it's the people who are willing to do work that moment in the trenches that will tell you that. Also, specifically for Jewish theater, there's an Alliance for Jewish Theater, and I'm very involved with them. And they have the names of all the member playwrights and all of the theater companies that have a specific mission to promote Jewish theater.
I'd like to find out more about that.
So it's, look up Alliance for Jewish Theater and you'll get there.
Thanks for mentioning.
Nice. And Dorian, do you want to add anything to this? Dorian?
Oh, there's one small wish that I have actually, and I get really frustrated that theaters that a lot of opportunities will either want a full-length play or a 10-minute play, and they seem to have let the good solid one act fall out of favor. And when things feels like a one act of 25-ish minutes or so, that's what the idea feels like. Produce a longer play. To me, to have a 10-minute play that's not just a Saturday Night Live sketch, that's a talent too, and it's one that I had to develop if I want to get my work out there anymore, but that good old one act that's part of like an evening of 3 one acts, they don't, and I don't know why. Why is that?
Interesting. I think we're out of time, so I want to be really respectful of the parameters here. Thank you all so much. It's so good to see your faces and to hear your voices, and this is amazing. And I'll be in touch online. Do you have any questions for me? Any last things you want to say?
Thank you.
No, just
Thank you for standing by us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great
Thanks
to
so
meet
much.
all of you.
Can't wait to read everybody's
I
stuff.
know.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.